Hi, so I'm back. Actually, wasn't gone that long, but we've just moved on to the last question to ponder, which is about the Age of Empire. So the question asks, what were the reasons America decided to expand its horizons and flex its economic and military muscle on the global stage? Uh, the two ideas that are happening there is really, okay, comes down to one big thing, and that is about, of course, money expanding its uh, economic, expanding itself as an economic power. So it's really about opportunity. And where does America see opportunity? So in the 1890s, we see two very important ideas emerge. Actually, three ideas. Sorry, three ideas emerge from two very important persons who have, um, who essentially, in terms of the gist of what they said, are overlapping. They say, in essence, the same thing. So the person who was mentioned first in the text, Frederick Jackson Turner, the frontier thesis, um, is the one that became sort of more widely known in the American public because it was presented at, again, another one of those international fairs held in the United States in the early 1890s, where he presented this idea. The frontier thesis was based on the idea that America had always been about westward expansion. Now that we had conquered all the frontiers of the continent, what's next? And he said that this desire to expand size and influence, presence was innate in the American being. That's his argument. And so he's advocating for a look beyond our borders. And so, where is that going to take us as a nation? And in his thesis, he's describing essentially the three things he felt needed to define America's future. One was the idea that America needed to start to flex its economic power by building interoceanic canal, right? That will, of course, as we know, become what is referred to as the Panama Canal. So, this notion that you could build a canal and greatly increase the flow of traffic, goods coming from the Atlantic and from the United States, passing through the canal and being able to make it through to the Pacific Ocean and then points beyond there, which were primarily they were looking at opportunities to expand into Asia. So the interoceanic canal is a big thing that he advocated. Point number two, he also advocated for the expansion of America's naval presence. America's naval presence wasn't really much until the early 1890s when federal law begins to change, partly in response to the advocacy of Mr. Turner. Although the other person we'll talk about is even more influential in that regard. So, Turner advocated for the expanding America's Navy so that we could compete with the other global powers, all of whom had significant navies. When you look at countries like Germany and the United Kingdom and China was a growing, excuse me, Japan's a growing power, Russia, just to give you four examples, very prominent examples, nations with sizable navies that were expanding their global influence. Um, and then the third thing that, of course, he's advocating is that America begins to expand its territorial presence beyond the continent, looking for places nearby. So, what he is implying here is the fact that, of course, America needed a stronger presence in the Caribbean. America needed a stronger presence in the parts of the uh, Great Pacific Ocean that were within reach of America's merchant vessels. Uh, so he is advocating America expanding its presence, and that meant in some cases he sounds like he was implying that America should be taking over by increasing its presence. It's more than just we're there, we're trading, let's go. It's even the idea that we would sort of take over and sort of direct these places, right? And of course, that is what we will do, every one of those things. Now, the other person, Alfred Thayer Mahan, is an instructor at the Naval Academy, But he writes one of the most influential works in naval history, The Influence of Sea Power on History. He would write that would be published in the early 1890s. A couple of years later, he had a follow-up talking about the role of the French Navy in the French Revolutionary Wars and the Napoleonic Wars. But the idea that came out of the first one is where really he gets the attention. And by the way, it's not just the United States government. It's not just the United States Department of the Navy that he gets the attention of. He gets global attention for this. There are um, experts in naval strategy and naval power in Europe that are citing Mahan's work. That's how influential it was. So he's excuse me, expecting the same things that Turner is. He says, in essence, the same things. Look, we need to build this interoceanic canal. And so there were a couple of sites where they had sort of figured out where it might end up going. Don't want to get into detail about that. But ultimately, we know that they built the Panama Canal. Two, the importance of expanding the size of the Navy. He, in particular, is advocate of a modern Navy with a fleet built of steel hull ships, right? So he's advocating that. And we will pass a naval act that does exactly that. And then finally, in terms of the takeover, he's a little more blatant, best way to say it, more blatant about the idea of, quote, takeover. The United States needed to come in and take over some of these other territories to expand the American presence in these territories, to expand its influence. And so, combined between Turner and Mahan, you have the underlying ideas of why does America decide to expand its horizons on the global stage. There were other signs, of course, in the presentation. You see things Americans were doing, particularly as you see how the policies in Hawaii begin to develop. They were happening before um, 1895, the mid 1890s, when we ultimately do sort of force out the Queen and take over the island and eventually attach it as a territory of the United States. It's a colony now. And then ultimately it would become a United States state, although that's not until 1959. But anyway, so those are the two big names. And I'm going to stop the recording here just because I think it's a little easier to have a break and then you can come back and take a look at the very last video.